on Capitol Hill, a clear majority of House Republicans voted to remove Congresswoman Liz Cheney from her leadership post yesterday after she repeatedly denounced former President Trump and his false claims that the last election was stolen. Republican Jim Jordan, one of the former president's most loyal allies in Congress, spoke with Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett about the vote and the future of the GOP.
Do me a favor and define what conservatism is now.
We are an American-first party, a populist party rooted in conservative principle.
Can you be a conservative and disagree with the president about the 2020 election?
I don't think it's helpful. I think we should be focused on making sure that we have integrity in our elections going forward. That's what I've always said about. There are millions of Americans who have concerns about what happened in this last election. I've never said this election was stolen. All I've said is, let's check it out.
Do those concerns originate with their own organic knowledge or because they hear President Trump say over and over and over it was stolen from him?
It originated with them. Of course it did.
Trump had nothing to do with that.
Well, all I'm saying is 80 million Americans instinctively know whether, regardless of what President Trump may or may not have said, they know. Well, think about it. I think maybe to reassure the American people, 80 million of them, both Republicans and Democrats who have those concerns, why not look into it? That's all I've said all along. But somehow, oh, that's crazy. You can't do that. Makes so much sense to me.
Courts, election officials, and the former president's own Justice Department looked into the 2020 election and found no evidence to overturn the result in any state. And yet, Mr. Trump continues to tell his supporters the election was a fraud.
The undisputed leader of the Republican Party is?
President Trump.
For how long?
I think he's going to run again, and I'm all for that.
I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office.
And you can't have the Republican conference chair, the Republican Party spokesperson, consistently attacking the leader of the party who 74 million Americans voted for.
In your party, there's a large conversation about cancel culture. Has Liz Cheney been canceled?
I've never called for her to step down or resign from Congress. I do think there's a big difference, though, between whether you're going to be in Congress or not, and us deciding as Republicans in Congress who's going to be our spokesperson.
Trump has described Cheney as a warmonger and yesterday called her a bitter, horrible human being.
Is Liz Cheney a bitter, horrible human being?
Look, I've worked with Liz. I've said all along that I don't think she should be conference chair.
But you know what I'm driving at. The former president has language that is highly personal at times and insulting. Do you agree with any of it in regards to Liz Cheney?
Well, I think in this situation, Liz has said some things about the president. I think it's probably elevated the rhetoric a little bit, and sometimes he comes back. That's human nature. I understand that.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
It is. It's very, very sad to me what has happened to Liz Cheney, that for telling the truth, something we all teach our children, you tell the truth.
Yeah.
She tells the truth, and she is greatly penalized for it.
Well,
now there seems to be revisionist history here in the Republican Party, and, dare I say, some selective amnesia about what was said and what wasn't said.
Well, I mean, to Congressman Jordan's point that this should be looked at, it has been the election should be looked at. It has been looked at. It was taken to, I think, 60 courts,
right,
all of whom said there's nothing here.
And what's fascinating is Elise Stefanik, who will replace Liz Cheney, presumably, has a much more moderate record of voting in Congress than Liz Cheney, who voted pretty much lockstep with President Trump.
I don't know. History is watching. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, because I don't think it's over yet.